If you want to know who someone cares about, look who they fight for.
Vice President Kamala Harris presents her vision for a so-called opportunity economy.
As president, I will take on the high costs that matter most to most Americans.
How her first major policy proposal makes a play for the middle class, and how it compares to former President Donald Trump's own economic plan.
We're a failing nation, but we're also a failing economy.
The CBS Evening News starts now. Good evening, everyone. I'm Major Garrett in for Nora. Tonight, Vice President Kamala Harris is making her first direct policy pitch to working class and middle class voters. The Democratic nominee traveled to North Carolina to explain what she calls an opportunity economy. It includes subsidies for new home buyers and help for new parents in the form of tax credits and support for childcare. There's also a push for cheaper drugs and even government action on grocery prices. Campaign promises come with price tags. Harris offered fewer details there, and of course, Congress would have to approve most of these proposals. Still, the vice president took the economic fight to Donald Trump with an emphasis on populism in a state Democrats haven't won since 2008. CBS's Nancy Cordes is in Raleigh.
Vice President Kamala Harris arrived in North Carolina bearing some big promises.
By the end of my first term, we will end America's housing shortage by building 3 million new homes and rentals that are affordable for the middle class.
She said she'd do it by providing tax incentives for home builders who construct less expensive starter homes. She also wants to give up to $25,000 in down payment assistance to first-time homebuyers. Here in Raleigh, the cost of a typical home has risen from $287,000 to nearly $450,000 just in the past 5 years.
Together, we will build what I call an opportunity economy.
When it comes to food, another strain on family budgets, Harris vowed to impose a ban on what she called grocery price gouging. The average cost of a pound of ground beef has risen 44% since 2019.
That's supposed to be like one of the cheapest meats you get, and somehow it's gone up to...
The Harris campaign hasn't provided many details on how these plans would work or how much they would cost, leading former President Donald Trump to speculate, sometimes wildly.
Now Kamala is reportedly proposing communist price controls. She wants price controls. And if they worked, I'd go along with it too, but they don't work.
On one thing, the two sides do seem to agree. On Face the Nation last weekend, Trump's running mate, Senator J.D. Vance, proposed a new $5,000 per child tax credit for families.
We want to have a more pro-family policy.
Harris upped the ante today, proposing $6,000 for newborns.
That is a vital, vital year of critical development of a child. And the cost can really add up, especially for young parents.
The last time Congress hiked the child tax credit during the pandemic, the childhood poverty rate dropped in half. But it bounced back up after the tax credit reverted to basically where it stands today, which is a maximum of $2,000 per child. Major?
Nancy Cordes, thank you. The Vice President and running mate Tim Walz will kick off a bus tour called The Road to Chicago this weekend as they prepare for next week's Democratic National Convention. With finishing touches nearly complete, security is tight as politicians, delegates, and protesters head to the Windy City. CBS's Ed O'Keefe joins us from Chicago with the latest. Ed, good evening.
Major, good evening. Thousands of Democrats are on their way here for the start of the convention on Monday, but city officials and law enforcement officers tell us they're also preparing for tens of thousands of mostly pro-Palestinian protesters to be in the streets nearby to protest over the course of the 4 days of the convention. The mayor, however, tells us that the city is ready and its visitors should feel safe as marchers exercise their free speech rights. The convention opens Monday with a celebration of President Biden. On Tuesday, it's former President Barack Obama who will address the crowd. Wednesday, it's former President Bill Clinton and vice presidential candidate Tim Walz. And Thursday, the nomination acceptance speech from Harris. We know she's been spending the last several days working on the remarks and is expected to continue doing so right up until Thursday night. She arrives here in Chicago on Sunday evening. And she and Democrats are hoping to maintain the momentum they've seen in recent weeks, as polls out in recent days suggest all the major battleground states are back in play. Major?
Back in play indeed. Ed O'Keefe, thank you so much. Our coverage of the Democratic National Convention from Chicago begins Monday night on CBS News 24/7 and right here at 10 p.m. Eastern. Frenzied preparations in Bermuda tonight as Hurricane Ernesto gains strength. A Category 2 storm with 100-mile-per-hour winds is expected to produce dangerous storm surge and make landfall early tomorrow. CBS's Dave Malcott joins us from Bermuda this evening. Dave, good evening.
Good evening, Major. Not only can we hear and feel and see Ernesto looking back there over the ocean, but there's also a Doppler radar site at the airport here in Bermuda looking at 155 miles. We can now see the eye through that. It is menacing, it is well-defined, and it's headed this way. Ernesto's fierce winds and churning waves are signs Bermuda is in for a bashing. Here's Minister of National Security Michael Weeks. I know Bermudians are hurricane hardy, but this is a big storm and it looks like it's coming directly here.
This storm is probably going to be right on top of us, closer than storms have in the past.
The worst will hit Saturday morning with 90-mile-an-hour winds and up to 9 inches of rain. With just hours before landfall, the largest grocery store was packed for a weather wipeout.
The best thing to do is obviously get your supplies beforehand.
Lorenzo Cook says in any hurricane, the best resource is often Bermudians themselves.
Obviously, a neighbor is a helping hand at all times.
Outside the hardware store, it's pouring, while inside, generators, flashlights, and coolers are being snapped off the shelves.
Watching the weather come in here, trying to get everything done.
As the storm creeps closer, Captain Jeremy Fowler secured the Pescador, an 80-foot sport fishing boat in a protected area of the harbor because he lost an engine. But he's riding out the storm with his friend Brian Alford.
Feeling pretty confident, but still optimistic and paying attention to what's going on. It's blowing the tops off the waves in the harbor here. I see some of the seawalls are starting to get pretty deep.
Wow, that is not the place you want to be. Our hearts go out to the crew of the Pescador. It is already bad. It's just going to get worse. And Major, this storm may have the same name as the storm that came through Puerto Rico, but it has a different personality now. It is much stronger.
Ferocious indeed. Dave Malcott, thank you. Ernesto's impact is now being felt here at home with life-threatening rip currents from Florida to New England. CBS's Lonnie Quinn is tracking all of it. Lonnie, good evening.
All right, I want to make that point very clear, Major. This storm is not going to be making a landfall anywhere in the United States. But just like you said, it's churning up the oceans. Big rip currents and big waves are what we're most concerned about. Take a look at this map. I mean, we're talking anywhere from Jupiter, Florida, all the way up to portions of New England and out to Long Island. High risk for rip currents, and that's probably for 2 days, if not 3 days, as we look ahead. What's going on? Why is this happening for a storm that is so far away from us? It says right there, it's like dropping a stone in the water. So the bigger waves are going to be near the center of the storm. Bermuda could have 20, 30-foot swells off its shores. But those swells, they push closer and closer to the shoreline. We get some 5 to 10-foot waves in our area. And of course, as that wave breaks on shore and that water rushes back out to sea, that's your rip current, and that's the problem. Currently, you've got a 100-mile-per-hour storm. It's a Cat 2. It's going to be weakening probably over the next 12 hours. Bermuda probably deals with a Cat 1 with 90-mile-per-hour winds. But look at this. From Bermuda all the way up to Newfoundland, it always holds on to a Cat 1 status, long duration as it travels along as a hurricane. Major, it's all yours.
Lonnie Quinn, thank you so much. Tonight, a guilty verdict in a dispute between Florida neighbors that turned deadly and gained national attention. A 60-year-old woman now faces decades in prison for shooting and killing her 35-year-old neighbor after an argument about her kids. Here is CBS's Mark Strassman.
The defendant is guilty of manslaughter.
Susan Lorenz, guilty in the killing of neighbor A.J. Owens last year. Police say Lorenz had yelled at Owens' kids playing outside. Owens went to Lorenz's house to confront her.
Miss Owens is banging on the door yelling. She's angry. She's angry about how the defendant treated her children.
Prosecutors related how Lorenz fired once through her front door, killing Owens. The victim was unarmed. Lorenz told police she shot in fear.
I panicked, and I was like, oh my gosh, she's really going to kill me this time, you know. And so I don't even actually remember picking up the gun. I just remember shooting.
The all-white jury rejected Lorenz's claim of self-defense. She never took the stand. The victim's family was emotional as the verdict was read.
It's a good step in the right direction. The jury did their job today. Now it's up to Judge Hodges to do his job.
Lorenz faces a sentence of up to 30 years behind bars.
Yes, ma'am.
Mark Strassman, CBS News, Atlanta.
Ceasefire talks to end the war in Gaza will resume next week, and CBS News has learned Iran is expected to delay its threatened retaliation against Israel to give those negotiations more time. Today, President Biden said negotiators are making progress.
Dealing with the ceasefire effort in the Middle East, and we are closer than we've ever been, but we're not there yet. But it's much, much closer than it was 3 days ago. So keep your fingers crossed.
Meanwhile, there is more violence in the region. CBS's Ramy Inocencio traveled to the occupied West Bank today following an attack by Israeli settlers.
Terror in the night. A mob of far-right Israeli settlers torched homes and cars as Palestinian families desperately tried to call for help. From the village of Jit in the West Bank, Israel has controlled this Palestinian territory since winning a war against its neighbors in 1967. Similar but different from Gaza, Palestinians here live restricted lives at odds with Jewish settlers who believe they have a right to build homes on this land. Thursday night, witnesses say Jewish settlers shot Rashid Mahmoud Azadeh in the chest. Villagers claim Israel's military blocked ambulances for an hour.
Who do you blame?
I blame the Israeli government who enabled the settlers and empowered them to attack the villages, said Hassan Arman. Settlers tried to break into his home with his children in the garden. He fought his attackers off, but they firebombed his car. The IDF told CBS it was not aware of these claims and said it removed the Israelis from the village. The village of Jit is today left both angry and in mourning. Rashid's father and mother simply broken. My son is a martyr, she said, and that is just his destiny. The UN said Israeli settlers have attacked Palestinians more than 1,200 times in the West Bank since October 7th.
And that Israeli settler attack on that Palestinian village of Jit appears to be an attempt to derail ceasefire talks in Qatar. But Secretary of State Antony Blinken has revealed he is headed to the Mideast, arriving tomorrow, a sign a ceasefire deal might be a bit closer. Major.
Ramy Inocencio, thank you. If you are shopping for a house or putting one on the market, big changes are coming starting tomorrow. CBS's Jolene Kent is here to explain what's changing. Jolene, what can you tell us?
Major, the new rules will affect buyers, sellers, and real estate agents across the board thanks to a landmark $418 million antitrust settlement. It will now become standard practice to negotiate costs like commissions with agents. So let's start with the buyers. In order to see a home privately, you have to sign a contract with an agent and agree to payment terms in advance. This means you could end up covering part of the commission, paying a flat fee, or paying the agent by the hour. Now, buyers aren't used to paying these fees, of course. And as for the browsers out there, the open houses, real estate agent Sotheby's tells us that listing agents are allowed to discuss general information about a home with potential buyers during an open house, but scheduling a private showing would require signing an agreement. Now, let's talk about sellers, of course. They used to cover the buyer's agent fee, say 5 to 6%. The new rule provides an opportunity to negotiate that commission. So it depends on how the contracts are written, but sellers could come out ahead here and buyers could be picking up more of the tab. But remember, the Federal Reserve is expected to cut interest rates come mid-September, which could bring a lot of buyers and sellers back into this house hunt. Major.
Jolene Kent, thank you so much. New details tonight about the final hours in the life of Friends star Matthew Perry, including who he was with. That is next. New court documents reveal the role Matthew Perry's longtime assistant allegedly played in the actor's death and how the Friends star spent the final 8 hours of his life. CBS's Adam Yamaguchi reports from Los Angeles.
Matthew Perry was injected with 3 shots of ketamine by his personal assistant,
according to Kenneth Iwamosa's plea agreement. He claims he gave Perry his first shot of ketamine at 8:30 a.m., a second shot at 12:45, and 40 minutes later, Perry allegedly asked for a third, telling Iwamosa to prepare the jacuzzi and shoot me up with a big one. Just after 4 p.m., Iwamosa found Perry unresponsive and called 911.
He was administered 4 or 5 times more than you would give a patient, even for general anesthesia.
Perry had been introduced to the drug in a clinical setting to help treat depression, but investigators say he later turned to illegal sources, including defendant Jasveen Sangha, referred to in court documents as the ketamine queen.
The ketamine supplied by Sangha would ultimately be the dose that took Matthew Perry's life.
Prosecutors say in an initial text message, Sangha offered to give Perry a free sample, saying it's unmarked, but it's amazing, adding, "I have more if he likes."
We've used ketamine for years and years in medicine to do things like treat pain, induce general anesthesia for surgery or a procedure.
But the drug has exploded in popularity for its psychedelic properties and off-label uses, often to treat PTSD, depression, and anxiety. There are now as many as 750 ketamine clinics in the U.S., some charging up to $1,000 per dose.
Patients sometimes in desperation may look around and shop for a solution that may not be exactly mainstream, but that they've read about or heard about as being a magic bullet.
In Matthew Perry's case, that magic bullet turned fatal.
He followed the arc whose substance use disorder begins in a doctor's office and ends in the street.
Now, here in this apartment building, authorities believe a woman known to her clients as the ketamine queen ran a so-called stash house, or a drug-selling emporium, where Matthew Perry's alleged enablers would bring thousands of dollars in cash in exchange for the drug. Major?
Adam Yamaguchi, thank you so much. A woman is accused of trying to swindle Elvis Presley's family out of his famed Graceland estate. Next. A Missouri woman is under arrest for what federal officials say was a plot to steal Elvis Presley's Graceland estate. Investigators say the woman, who used multiple names, falsely claimed Presley's daughter pledged the property as collateral for a loan she failed to repay before her death. She faces more than 20 years in prison if convicted. On the Road is next with the story about the importance of being seen.
This portion of the CBS Evening News is sponsored by Fasenra. Visit us at fasenra.com.
That is tonight's CBS Evening News. For Nora O'Donnell, I'm Major Garrett. Good night and have a great weekend.